Hello and welcome to That's Absurd. Please elaborate. We have two hosts for you today. I am one of them. I am Trace Dominguez, a science communicator and other things. Also.
And I am Julian Huguet, other things and a science communicator.
Wow. Thanks for that. You just accepted my mess up and you just went with it. And now it's not a mess up anymore. Now it's funny.
I acknowledge that we're three-dimensional, you know? Everybody's got to have a brand where you're just one thing.
Yeah.
We're not. We're science communicators plus more.
Plus other things.
Yeah.
Like I pet a cat sometimes and sing occasionally.
Yeah. Those other things not relevant to this podcast where we do science communication.
That's right. If you haven't listened to the show before, in every episode, we answer a question from you, the audience. Those questions are ridiculous or crazy or off the wall, kind of wild questions that you submit to us. There are links down below the episode in the description if you're watching on YouTube, which you can do now, or if you're listening in your podcast app, in the show notes, there are links. You can email us. You can go to our website, that'sabsurdshow.com. You can call us on the phone, all sorts of different things, and leave us a question, and hopefully we can answer it here on the show. This week, we have two questions. Each of us are going to tackle one, and Julian is going to go first. Julian, what is your question, and who asked it?
My question comes from Frederik, and Frederik sent in a voice note.
Ooh.
Hello. I'm Frederik from Copenhagen, Denmark. I have a question. What if raindrops did not have a terminal velocity? I thought about this question after I heard the episode about P reaching terminal velocity in skyscrapers. From there on, I thought about what if things did not have a terminal velocity. And from there, I thought about the most common object that was falling I could think of, which is rain. Would clouds even be up high enough that it would have a real difference in the velocity of the raindrops when it hit the ground? And what would happen? I'm pretty sure it doesn't solve anything, aside from my curiosity. Thank you. I love the show.
Does that solve anything?
Oh, we will never escape Roman. Thank you, Frederik, for that. I had a feeling deep in my gut that he would be from Denmark. Okay. All right, Frederik. What if raindrops didn't have a terminal velocity?
Ooh.
Let's get into it. First of all, I love that he references Joffrey's old question about there's definitely like kind of two distinct bubbles of people, I think, who ask questions on the show. And it's those who immediately go to bodily functions and those who do not.
Yeah,
right?
kind of. Yeah,
your
farts
Rickies,
and
your
peas
Joffreys.
and poops. The Rickies and Joffreys and now Fredericks, I guess, but not really.
No, Frederik avoided it.
Yeah,
Frederik's like, I'm not going to be gross like that. I'm just thinking of, I'm not a big weirdo.
The Rickies of the world.
My friend who also listens sent me something last night where he, of course, included, does this solve anything? And it was a question about if all the humans peed into the Grand Canyon, would it fill it up? And I was like, well, we will never escape Roman.
Oh my gosh.
And Roman's question. Anyway, Frederik, thank you for asking that. It's fascinating question for a lot of reasons that weren't immediately evident when I started pondering, but let's get into it.
Yeah.
Trace, do you listen when I tell you things, what terminal velocity is?
It's the terminal at the end of the train station where the velocity of the train goes to 0. And it stops, and then you can get on the train to go to your soccer match in Florence, Italy.
This is a very, very specific definition. It sounds to me also like it could be a 90s action thriller. Somebody must have made that. Like somebody
terminal
running through an
velocity?
airport.
No, I have to Google it. Hang on.
A knockoff of Speed, right?
If it doesn't exist,
it's an airplane taxiing around an airport, and if the airplane slows down.
Yes! There is a movie from 1994 starring Charlie Sheen. I'm going to the Wikipedia page now, and just so we're all aware, it has an IMDb rating of 5 out of 10.
Not promising.
The plot: former KGB operatives, including Chris, pursue a stolen shipment of gold bullion intended for the Moscow Reserve. Ditch, who I can only assume is a person, initially framed for Chris's death, joins her in stopping the Russian mob's coup d'etat attempt. After a series of intense confrontations, Ditch and Chris successfully thwart the coup and receive commendations at the Kremlin.
Wait, is this like a pro-Russian movie? This is
I'm
so
not actually
weird.
sure now.
Did they make it
What the-
for post-Soviet Union Russia? They're like, those
Yeah.
people are going to be crazed for Western movies.
Weird. So Chris is a former KGB operative. Oh no, she and her pursuers are. No wonder this movie got a 5. It didn't even make sense in the summary that I just read. But yeah, it's an action film. Congratulations. There's a daredevil skydiver played by Charlie Sheen who's caught up in a criminal plot by Russian mobsters, including James Gandolfini.
Wow.
He's forcing him to team up with a freelance circus.
That guy always gets typecast as mobsters. There's definitely like a...
It was like, wait. It was one of 2 skydiving-themed action films released in the fourth quarter of 1994, the other being Paramount Pictures' Drop Zone. And there additional information here on Wikipedia. It received mostly negative reviews from critics.
I miss how stupid the 90s was. So, like, the distinct flavor of stupid that the 90s was compared to today.
Just the sheer number of movies that were like, what if this white dude just did this crazy thing that normally he wouldn't have done? Like, he just decided to join and steal cars. And then, a couple movies later, he's not there, but everybody else has superpowers.
What if this cop who's not a surfer became a surfer so he could get in with a crime syndicate?
What a good documentary that is.
So good. I love Point Break.
So great. It's so good.
So Terminal Velocity is
a movie from 1994. I'm sorry. You were ramping up and I just punched you.
Stop it. No Charlie Sheen. Terminal velocity is the constant speed an object reaches when the force of gravity pulling it downward is balanced out by the force of drag from the fluid it's moving through, right? Yeah. Fluid is just any sort of medium that deforms around something that when a force is applied to it. So it can be air, it can be water. Yeah. And drag
I never thought about that.
Yeah.
So if you drop a rock in the ocean, at some point it'll hit the terminal velocity for water and that rock because gravity's pulling it down in the water. I never thought about it. I always picture it as something like the terminal velocity of something falling through air. I never really thought of it as through other fluids, but that makes total sense.
And remember, there are, other planets that have thicker atmospheres and things that we can get into later. But drag is a force that resists the motion of an object through a fluid. There are a lot of different types of drag. There's like skin friction drag, where just the texture of a surface as air or whatever fluid moves across it can cause that object to slow down. Howard Hughes was a big innovator because before him, metal airplanes had big bumpy rivets sticking out of them. And he was like, what if we smoothed these? And people were like, he's a genius. You've got induced drag that's actually caused by the wing of an airplane that makes lift. So the faster it goes, the more drag it creates, all sorts of drag. Now, terminal velocity depends on a few things. If all other things are equal, terminal velocity will go up if an object is more massive or if the acceleration due to gravity is bigger. So like I said, if you're on another planet that has a stronger gravitational pull, it'll fall faster even if the atmospheric density is the same. Terminal velocity will go down if the density of the fluid is greater. So like you mentioned, in water, water's got a greater density than air. If the frontal area of the object is greater, or if the object's coefficient of drag is greater. Coefficient of drag depends on a lot of things, but in large part, it's due to an object's shape. If you've got a sphere, the coefficient of drag might be as big as 0.5 or as small as 0.07. A teardrop shape, though, can be as small as 0.045.
That seems much smaller.
It is much smaller. It's interesting.
And I don't even know what I'm talking about.
It's a scalar quantity. There's no unit to it. So it's just you multiply that part of the equation by whatever this coefficient is, right? And smaller means higher terminal velocity. So yeah, that teardrop shape is more aerodynamic. Any idea why?
I would assume that it's turbulent flow related.
Yeah, exactly.
I too have watched Smarter Every Day.
Yep.
And Veritasium occasionally. Let me guess. The teardrop shape, assuming it's oriented in the right direction, say the teardrop is aft, like behind
the pointy bit is
the pointy
in
bit.
The back.
Yeah, or if it's coming downward, I guess like a raindrop, it's up. But that's in the back of the direction of motion, and so the air can kind of go around the big bump in the front, and then it kind of like turbulences around the back. I think that's the technical term for it.
Yep. You're not far off. You're pretty much right on it. The flow, the longer the airflow stays attached to the skin of the object, the more aerodynamic, because when it detaches from that skin, you get a turbulent wake, and that causes drag and slows it down. So that teardrop shape keeps that airflow attached, or whatever fluid, for as long as possible. I am such a huge nerd. I was looking into the shape of airplane drop tanks from World War II because I was wondering why they were teardrop shaped. That's how I learned this.
Huh. Honestly, for you, I'm not surprised.
I know. But so for context, for those who aren't the biggest nerds like I am, right? A lot of times airplanes, especially like military jets, will carry extra fuel tanks externally, and then when they get into combat, they'll drop them. But it helps them get farther so they can actually get to the fight. During World War II, the British made some kind of makeshift ones out of paper mache, and they were more like pill-shaped. Okay. And even though they held about the same amount of fuel as metal teardrop ones that came on later, they wouldn't get the airplane as far because they caused more drag, so the airplane had to use more fuel to travel at its cruising speed. So it has real implications. All of this, how fluid moves over objects, is a huge, huge business. Like millions and millions are spent on supercomputers that can do computational fluid dynamics and simulate how fluids move around aircraft and ships stuff. Yeah. It saves a lot of money in the long run. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I mean, if you're on a ship going across the Pacific and that's your whole thing, like you're doing it over and over and over again, even if you can make like 0.001% more efficient, that's probably hundreds of thousands or millions of gallons of fuel over the life of a ship. I mean, like that's crazy to think about.
Exactly. So I've told you all this about how efficient the teardrop shape is to now tell you this.
Oh.
Raindrops are not that shape.
You're telling me that my childhood elementary school thing that my teacher printed out probably from some book somewhere, who knows where they got it these days, probably just Google Images, and then that it's wrong?
Yes. Yes, that's
Do I sound surprised? I was really working to sound surprised.
Were you surprised or no? Or have you seen too many Smarter Everyday's Veritasium's videos?
No, I just don't assume anything.
Yeah.
I learned when I was 7 is the one and true thing.
Yes. Yeah. Imagine updating knowledge that you learned when you were younger with more accurate information.
Yeah.
That's a good mindset to have. All right. Yeah, no, it's true, though, that even though that teardrop shape, quote unquote, raindrop shape is more aerodynamically efficient, it is not a shape that raindrops actually form themselves into as they fall.
Whoa. I mean, it is surprising, to be honest. It is surprising. I don't think about raindrops like that, but what shape are they then?
Pretty much spherical.
Really?
Yeah. Depends on the size, depends on some other factors. But yeah, raindrops pretty much form a sphere because of... Any guesses?
Your mom.
Yeah, my mom is the only person keeping weather working the way we understand it to work. If she takes a single day off, it's literally raining cats and dogs.
Thanks, Roxanne.
She'll love that. No, it's surface tension of the water molecules.
That makes sense.
H2O is a polar molecule, right? Even though it doesn't have a net charge, it still has a partial charge, and the slightly more negative oxygen is attracted to the slightly negative charged hydrogens. And so it forms itself into a shape that has the greatest volume to surface area ratio, which is...
a sphere.
A sphere.
And it's in a free fall state, so that also makes sense that it would have the ability to do that, even with the friction of the air.
Unless it gets big enough that it has enough air resistance to actually deform that sphere shape.
Yeah.
In which case, it becomes even less teardrop-like. It looks actually more like a hamburger bun.
I was going to say, it should just flatten out at that point because the air's pulling on it.
Yep. Well, the front of it is flattening out.
Yeah.
And the back of it is more spherical. So
cool.
Raindrops form hamburger shapes. Now, there's a couple other shapes they form, but I will save that for later. So let's start talking about the actual size that raindrops can get to. I think this will help inform just how dangerous it would be if they did not have terminal velocity. There was a farmer from Vermont in the early 1900s who actually first started figuring out the size of raindrops. His name is Wilson A. Bentley. He's the same person who made some really early iconic photographs of snowflake shapes and showed that they were all, very radically different.
Yeah.
So Wilson Bentley put out a bunch of flour, powdered grain, out in a little dish in the rain, and he uncovered it for a few seconds, and he let some water droplets hit it. And then he brought it back inside and he let those bits dry and he pulled them out. And he found that raindrops are typically anywhere from 0.2 to 5 millimeters in diameter. So pretty small.
That's pretty small.
Guys.
Little baby guys.
Yeah.
And it's their birthday. Literally, they were born.
They were born that day.
They
were born that day. I did some math just to figure out, just for funsies, because I like, taking molar masses and stuff and figure out how many molecules there are. But in a 0.5 millimeter raindrop, by the way, that would be 17 quintillion water molecules.
Whoa!
So that's for fun.
That's still quite so many molecules.
Still a lot.
There's so many molecules.
Tiny little raindrop. They can be quite small, but still large enough that they precipitate out of a cloud, right? Because a cloud is also lots of little water molecules that are starting to condense, but they're not heavy enough to actually start falling toward the ground. Condensation into a cloud starts when there's like a little seed, we think, a little cloud nuclei. It's easier when there's proper conditions like dust in the air. As this water vapor rises up, it cools down, it expands, and it reaches a dew point. And then it can start gathering around these little nuclei, and they form cloud droplets, which have a radius of about 20 micrometers.
Oh, that's small.
So, yes, very, very small. They're so small, in fact, remember we were talking about all the different factors that influence terminal velocity. They're so small because they're so light and they have a relatively big area for their size.
Yeah.
That they have a terminal velocity of 1.3 centimeters per second.
Okay. That seems pretty slow.
It's so slow, if these droplets were to fall from the typical cloud base that like the lowest that clouds are at, which is about 500 meters above the ground, it would take them 10 hours to reach the ground.
Wow, that is slow. That's very slow.
So you can see why they stay aloft.
Yeah.
But in fact, them forming also helps keep them aloft. So as water vapor condenses, it releases heat.
Yeah, okay.
It's known as the latent heat of condensation. And by heating up the air around it, it causes it to be less dense, and it causes water droplets, these cloud droplets, to rise up even higher.
I vaguely remember this from like 8th grade science.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah.
When you're like, how does that cloud stay up there? It's like, it's kind of keeping itself up there in part.
Yeah. Cool.
So these cloud droplets, they make the air around them warmer, they move up, and they go higher into the cloud, and it gets colder and colder, and they bump into more molecules, and eventually they get heavy enough that they form a water droplet that can't be supported by the air, and it precipitates out and it falls to the ground as rain or snow. So when this happens, though, that means that the rain is basically forming in the top part of the cloud.
Yeah.
Which means if we wanted to calculate the maximum velocity of the raindrop, we should look at how high clouds can form.
Yeah. How high can clouds form, Julian?
Great question. Well, according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA,
I love that.
It really depends on your latitude. So in the polar regions, they can't form as high. They can form as high as 25,000 feet, which is about 7.5 kilometers.
Yeah.
If you move towards the tropics, they can get higher and higher, as high up as 60,000 feet, or 18 kilometers.
Whoa.
So, calculating how fast a raindrop might be traveling is not that difficult.
No.
If we assume it's starting at 18 kilometers, it's just a simple equation. It's the square root of 2 times gravitational acceleration,
9.8
and the
meters per
distance
second.
it's going to fall. Yep, and the distance it's going to fall. So there's 18 kilometers, 18,000 meters. Throw it all together, do some jiggery-joo math, and we get a final velocity of 594 meters per second.
That seems fast.
It seems fast. To Freedom Unit users like you and me, let me put it another way, 1,300 miles per hour.
Okay, that's too fast.
That's too fast.
That's too fast. Nope, that's too fast.
That's very, very fast. By the time it reaches sea level, it's going almost twice the speed of sound.
Okay. So you just have a lot of little sonic booms.
Well, except we only get sonic booms because that's stuff pushing its way through air faster than air can move.
It's pushing.
And if we don't
falling.
have air resistance, we don't get sonic booms.
Yeah, fine.
So it's
I was just thinking those rain sticks at Natural Wonders would sound so much cooler if it was just a bunch of sonic booms.
Yeah.
It would be cooler than, just rice or whatever beans falling through.
So now I'm thinking 594 meters per second. How much energy is that raindrop going to have, right? To put it into context of how destructive it might be. So let's take a fairly small raindrop. Let's say it's 0.5 millimeters in radius with all its many, many, many little molecules.
Yeah.
And I calculate, all right, at that speed, just multiply that mass by velocity squared and divide it by 2 for kinetic energy of 0.09 joules.
Oh, 0.09 joules doesn't sound too bad.
That's not so bad.
That's just like a little guy. A little guy. Just a little guy.
Just a little supersonic projectile.
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe this won't be so bad. We talked about the largest size that Wilson A. Bentley found of about a 3 millimeter radius. What if one of those fell from the top of the highest clouds in the tropics? How much energy would they have? I did the math. That's almost 20 joules. So still, not a lot. Okay. What if we go to the biggest raindrop that we've ever recorded, which was about a centimeter in diameter? So 5 millimeters across. Then how much energy are we talking about?
Yeah.
At that point, we have a kinetic energy of about 92 joules. Let's put it in perspective. A bullet fired from a handgun, so not like a big rifle cartridge, but like a bullet from a handgun, that might have the kinetic energy of 500 joules.
Oh, and we're at 92. So we're 1/5 of a bullet, which is still a lot.
Still a lot. I wouldn't want to get hit with it.
Nope.
Now, fortunately, that's the upper size limit of raindrops, right?
Well, when you put it like that, it makes me think that maybe it's not.
I love, but your little radar went off like, this is a trap. This is
But you know what? I'll be your patsy, Julian.
Yeah, do it.
Yeah, totally. 5 millimeters. That's the science.
Of course, Trace, but why do you think raindrops are limited to that size?
Because of the air they're falling through.
Yes.
We don't got no more air.
Right. So we talked about raindrop sizes.
Right.
If they're small, they're spherical. As they get bigger, they can hamburger bun out. As they get even bigger, and there's more frontal area hitting the air, it pushes the raindrop into a parachute or jellyfish shape before eventually breaking the raindrop apart into smaller raindrops.
That makes sense.
Right. So that's why we don't get like gigantic blobs of water falling from the sky.
Right.
And of course, like everything, there are complexities in how big the raindrops get as they're falling. Like as they hit other smaller raindrops, if the speed difference is too big, it doesn't suck it up and absorb it. But if it's close enough, it will absorb it and grow. So I'm not saying that like they're all going to be gigantic automatically, but there is potential for them to get bigger. And just how big, I really don't know, but I think it might be illustrative to watch this video of astronauts aboard the ISS.
Oh, I think I've seen this video.
So Trace, as you're watching it, what do you see?
Okay, let me open it up here. I see, my buddy Reed Weissman.
Of course you know him. Of
astronaut.
course you know.
He's great. Super nice fellow.
Of course you know the astronaut in the video.
And he's got a bubble of water. It looks like it's being squeezed out of one of their water bottle bag things. Like they have a straw that goes into a bag and then they can suck the water out of it. Oh, wow. And it's just this like tennis ball. Oh my gosh, it's humongous.
It's
that's
huge.
so big.
Right?
Wow.
So the ISS.
Oh, wait.
What?
Did they just put a GoPro inside the water?
They did.
That's space is the best.
Listeners,
this is so cool.
To give you an idea of how big this water blob they're building in the ISS is, an entire GoPro can fit inside of it.
That's so cool.
It's very large, and as far as I can tell, it would just keep growing if they kept adding more water to it.
Seems like it would, yeah.
Right? So I think that's a good analogy for a raindrop falling without any air resistance, because up on the ISS, they're basically just all in free fall all the time.
Right.
Right? They're
Right.
falling at the earth and missing it. They're flying Douglas Adams style. And so the air around them also is falling with them, so there's no, air resistance. There's no relative motion of the air against this water blob to break it up. So as long as these astronauts keep adding more water to this blob, the blob consumes more.
The blob.
The blob demands it. Also, was that a 90s movie?
Oh, I think it was like a 70s,
Okay.
early 80s movie, The Blob.
You're
I
right.
mean, it's much older. I think they actually I saw the one that was remade probably in the 80s, but I think the original must be from like the 50s. Let me look. Yeah, 1958.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Gross.
This is fun to just assume that when you say a thing that there's a movie from a specific era from it. Okay. What I'm getting at, though, is we might have gigantic blobs of rain falling from the sky if there's no air resistance.
Julian, you distracted me with space, and now you're telling me things are bad?
Yes, sorry.
Julian!
It's kind of this podcast as a whole.
Okay, you're right, yeah.
So remember that bullet from a handgun has that energy of about 500 joules? I calculated how much water you would need to have a raindrop with that equivalent amount of energy. And the radius of said raindrop would only have to be about 8.8 millimeters.
Oh.
Does that blob look bigger than 8.8 millimeters to you?
Yeah, that looks tennis ball, baseball, squash ball, highlight ball size.
Yes, several centimeters at least, I would say.
Big, good,
Right?
big, ouch.
So we went from under 100 joules at a 5 millimeter radius to over 500 joules at an 8.8 millimeter radius. So at this rate, right, the energy is just going to expand exponentially as it gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Oh, no.
I think basically what we're getting at is a rainstorm would be a catastrophic event here down on Earth.
I mean, it means that Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs is definitely a work of fiction.
Yes.
Because a meatball is... I mean, it's a lot of water, but it's got other things in it, too.
Yeah, hopefully that the air can somehow magically push against and slow down.
Oh, my gosh. That's... Okay. No, thank you. Can I just say that? No, thank you.
No, it would be bad. It would be bad, I would say,
bad.
Frederik, if that wasn't clear. I guess the only upside, Frederik also asked in his question about other forms of precipitation like hail.
Yeah.
Hail, I don't think you could actually get it to form.
Because of the no air thing?
Yeah, because of the no air resistance thing. So the way hail forms
Yeah.
in thunderstorms is it's raindrops initially that start falling, and then there's such strong updrafts, it blows them back up higher to a place where they can freeze, and then they fall again, and then they go back up and they can freeze again, and eventually you get big old hailstones that fall down and dent all your cars. So,
I honestly didn't know that was how hail is made. That makes total sense, though. You know, it's just freezing and goes back up and it's freezing itself. That makes total sense, but wow, I actually never thought about it. Cool.
yeah, so at least you're not getting like solid projectiles traveling this speed.
Right.
But frankly, if you have a blob of water and it hits something at that speed, the surface tension is still going to keep the blob of water pretty painful, right? It's not
Ouch.
a solid, but it
Yeah.
wants to stay together to some degree. It's like when people jump off a bridge into water.
Yeah, I was thinking that. I'm like, people say that you could jump off a high enough, like, cliff. You're having fun, you jump off a cliff high enough into the water. You have to know how to hit the water. 'Cause
Right.
At a certain height, it becomes essentially solid.
Yes, you have to like punch through it. You have to make your hands a small area so you can break that surface tension.
Right.
And punch through water. That's how, Olympic divers have to dive as well.
Yeah.
But if you belly flop into it, it hurts a lot.
I feel like it would hurt a lot. And
Yeah.
maybe a fatal amount.
Maybe fatally hurt you.
Terminal belly flopping.
velocity.
Oh,
we
you
brought it back. Brought it all back.
I'm proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Trace, that's my conclusion. Same for you, Frederik. It would be basically, most likely, gigantic blobs of water falling at almost twice the speed of sound that would probably destroy all your roofs and your cars and, rain mass death and destruction on things around you. You be grateful for air resistance.
Think of the erosion. Think of
Oh, it would be incredible. I didn't even think
all
of that.
The things that could go wrong.
Right?
This was yikes.
Yeah, that's a great point. The weathering that would happen from it.
Yeah.
Because rain is
Huge.
already a major cause of weathering and erosion, but it's such a slow actor over a long time period. But now,
Yeah.
eh,
Oof. Wow.
you're just shooting cannonballs at the Grand Canyon. It's just,
Would that solve anything?
would that solve anything?
Well, let's take a quick break and come back with another question. Julian, give me your best dinosaur roar.
Oh God, an asteroid! It's horrible!
Wow, that was not where I expected that to go. We're popping in before the show to tell you about I Know Dino. It's a dinosaur podcast.
We think of those dinosaurs being this thing that's been dead for tens of millions of years. Even so, studying dinosaurs can still teach us stuff that is relevant to the world today.
Yeah, like climate models to help us understand global warming.
Migration patterns of dinosaur lineages, they tell us about Earth's changing continents.
We can also study dinosaur diets, what plants lived then, and maybe what animals and how they interact.
And, this is super cool, many dinosaur injuries, paleopathologies, they're the first known occurrences of diseases.
And they talk about all this kind of stuff on I Know Dino. It comes out every week with new dinosaur stories that you're not going to hear anywhere else. Like, I hadn't heard of a lot of these, which is pretty cool.
You can find I Know Dino on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever podcasts are. And if you found us, you can probably find them. Go check them out. Welcome back to That's Absurd. Please elaborate your favorite podcast for a rainy day when the apocalyptic rains come. We've covered one question. Now it's time for Trace's. What's yours this week?
Mine this week comes from Cooper, who asks, do animals think and or form thoughts in their own language? Yeah.
Oh, man. You keep getting these really, really difficult to answer ones.
Yeah, I had fun with this one.
I wouldn't know where to start.
So he elaborated, this question comes from wondering what might be going on in the noggin of your pet when you interact with them. Whether talking to your pet and giving a command or simply saying their name, they have a response and sometimes an expression. So my thought was, if humans have a stream of consciousness in response to different stimuli or communication from others, do animals have a similar type of response? And if so, is that thought or emotion in their quote-unquote language, I say that because he put it in quotes, or form of communication? For instance, a dog thinks and barks, or a cat thinks and meows, just like they do when they communicate audibly. I hope this helps. I look forward to hearing what you guys think. I don't think he meant a pun there, but it's kind of a pun. Anyway, cool. So I liked this question. Julian, you have a menagerie at your house.
I do.
Do you think that Pepper thinks in a language? When you hear this, I know you said you have nowhere to start, but you have Pepper. What do you, when you talk to Pepper, other than saying strange things in your head, what do you think that Pepper's saying in her head?
I think to say that Pepper thinks when she does something is giving her too much credit.
Yeah, I thought that while I was saying it.
No,
we love Pepper, to be honest. We do.
She's actually a pretty smart dog. We make fun of her, but no, she's smart. But there are definitely moments when you can kind of see the wheels turning. I know what she's going to do before she does it, but I can see her getting to that moment.
Yeah.
And I have no idea internally what that would, quote, sound like, right?
Yeah.
I definitely put words to all my thoughts.
Okay.
Or so I think. I don't know.
So, that's great. When you're thinking by yourself, you're thinking about something. What's going on in your head? Are you thinking in images, feelings, words, all of those things and more? You know, what's going on in your head?
There's definitely, it's like an audiobook or like a narrator kind of thing.
Same.
But I also think there's a component of emotion that influences my actions that I'm like not very aware of, that I don't pay close attention to, but I can't deny that it's there, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And it makes me act on more impulse, or just if I'm kind of cranky, like didn't get enough sleep or haven't eaten or something like that. Like there's definitely not always a like, I'm going to snap and be sassy now, like train of thought sometimes. Sometimes it's just, wow, that was a really rude thing to say to the people in your household. Don't do that again.
And you think in your head, wow, that was a really rude thing to say.
Yeah, afterwards.
Yeah.
For sure.
And I wonder if you tell yourself that you think that, this is just me going off, right? I wonder if you tell yourself later, oh, and then I thought that was really rude. Or if you just felt an emotion of, oh, I have some shame, I feel like, you know, and you later attribute it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to answer a lot of these questions because we don't know how animals think in this way. I do want to address a couple of things that Cooper said at the end there with like dogs thinking in barks and cats thinking in meows. Both dogs and cats are great examples of animals that we spend a lot of time with as humans. Dogs have evolved alongside of us. We have selectively bred them to be very human friendly, and I'll get into that a little bit more in a minute. But like cats don't actually meow at other cats typically. You know, they make a lot of noises. They hiss, they growl, they can spit and do, not literally like with saliva, but like making like, you know, kind of sounds. And dogs do the same thing when they're with other dogs. They're not necessarily like, woof, 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 woof. You know, like they're not, it's not, the 101 Dalmatians, not exactly like an accurate determination of dog communication. But that doesn't matter. My point is, I think it was really interesting of him to put himself out there and be like, what are they thinking about? And like, what does it sound like? Which I think you put your thumb right on right at the beginning. So I think before we can really answer that, we have to really answer, do animals think? It's a complex question, actually, that because if you think about it from a scientific perspective, we're trying to answer this question with as much science as we can. We have to understand, firstly, how would you prove an animal is thinking?
That's a great question.
Right. Because we can't ask
their
them.
Diary and say, wow.
Dear diary, today
when
I
ate my food, I thought that was...
Psychologists and animal behaviorists, this is their job. There's journals just about animal cognition, but Mark Hauser, a Harvard professor of psychology who studies how animals think, known as animal cognition, says, quote, of course they think. How could they not think and manage to survive in the world? However, he then used the example of humans. Like, we are animals, and like other animals, we have thoughts. But how did we get the mechanisms for our perception? We got those mechanisms in the same way an animal would from evolutionary processes. So animals clearly do think because they do things, they use tools, they communicate with each other. And it's fascinating to think about, but do they think like us? And I did a whole show about animal cognition with PBS Nature called Animal IQ. You can find it on the PBS Terra channel. It's still out there. And what I learned essentially in a nutshell is animals do think about things, but they don't think the way we do. And that is a huge problem. And we're going to spend a good chunk of the episode kind of understanding that, because that makes it very hard to answer that question of, do animals think, and how do we know they do? Because we have to design tests in order to try and break down what they're thinking about and how their cognition works. Because we can't just ask them, hey, what are you thinking about? On Animal IQ, I worked with Dr. Natalia Borrego. She studies big cats, specifically lions, and she would give them these giant puzzle boxes.
Wait, Borrego?
Yeah.
Isn't that sheep in Spanish?
She is Spanish, but she's a sheep studying the lions.
I love that. She's Dr. Sheep studying animals.
Well, we need to understand why they are bad in order to understand why they could be good. So she gave them these giant puzzle boxes. And in the puzzle box was a hunk of meat. And to open the puzzle box to get the meat, the lion would, bat it around or have to figure out how to solve the puzzle. It wasn't like a super complicated puzzle. It usually was like,
she
pull
literally
a thing.
Studied lions. I thought you were just making a pun.
No, she literally studied lions.
Sheep studying lions. That's the best thing I've ever heard.
That's literally what she did.
Amazing.
Yeah. She wrote papers on this.
That's so good.
There's some really good video I'll put on our Instagram of this. And what she found is that eventually the lions would figure out how to get into the puzzle box. Not every lion would figure it out. And if you paired an unsuccessful lion with a successful lion, then 4 of 5 initially unsuccessful lions would figure it out. What that showed, Natalia, was that these lions could learn socially. But how? It didn't answer at all. So that's just like one little teeny aspect of intelligence is social learning. You and I have social learning. I can show you how to do something and you can pick it up and like go and, basically the whole basis of our society is predicated on social learning and shared culture. And like lions have this like very small part of that in that they can socially learn directly from each other. If they watch some other lion do it, I can learn to do it. But not every animal can do that. And it's not the only way to test cognition.
So if we had an educational podcast for other animals, it would not be as successful.
It might not be. Yeah.
They would listen and they'd be like, I learned nothing.
Yeah. They'd listen to it and just be like, I don't get it.
I get no benefit from this.
And one ear out the other. I don't understand what they're talking about. I'm going to go try and get this meat out of this big metal box.
With my face, just slamming it into it over and over.
These lions would smack it and it would just go flying. And it's crazy because it would take 2 people to lift it up and set it out there where the lion was going to interact with it. And the lion would come up and just be like, bonk, and knock it like it was nothing. We are weak little crazy things that are like, oh, put meat in a box and you're going to get it out. And the lion's like, what are you doing? Like,
just hulks out.
It's so funny. Anyway, another way we can test cognition is the cognitive pulling paradigm, also known as the rope test. Have you ever heard of this?
No.
Okay, it's very cool. You have basically a loop of rope. 2 ends are on an experimental side, like the experimentee kind of participant side, and it loops around behind a wall or something, and you have to pull the ropes at the same time to pull a reward out from under the wall. So food or something like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
right?
I think I could probably figure that out with enough months.
Yeah. So basically, it requires a few different things of the animals. Not only do they have to understand what's happening, that they need to go pull the rope, and maybe they will because they'll just like pull it for fun, but they also need to get up there with another animal. They can't do it alone. So they need to work together with 2 animals to pull the rope to solve the problem, and then they need to pull it at the same rate. They can't pull it too fast, they can't pull it too slow, or it won't pull the food out from under the wall. So there are a lot of animals that can do this. For example, there's video of elephants passing this test. One will walk up to the rope and wait, holding onto the rope, for another elephant to walk up to the other rope, and then they'll both pull at the same time. Lions can also pass this test, as can bonobos, chimps, orangutans, capuchin monkeys, tamarins, macaques, hyenas, wolves, otters, dolphins, ravens, rooks, parrots, and kia. It's a species of parrot.
Kia, very smart parrot in New Zealand.
Yeah, kia, which all of these can pass the rope test. And what does it show? Cooperation, understanding that other animals are important, so that there's like another individual involved, and some complex social skills. It's really interesting, but it actually doesn't tell us much about their thoughts and like what they're thinking about, because there are too many variables. Right. Most of the time they're in captivity, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they know and like totally comprehend all of the parts of the puzzle. Right. They just know that if I pull rope with other pull rope person, I get food.
I could even see it with wolves, like my dog loves tug of war. 2 wolves being like, oh, let's tug on this thing. And then it's oh, sweet, food came out. Like, that was fortunate. Interestingly, wolves will wait about 10 seconds for a partner wolf to show up to pull on it. So they get that they can't pull on it alone to get the food. They have to wait. But a lot of this is behavioral training. They get lots and lots of attempts at this, and they set it up again, and then they go pull on it, and it doesn't do what they want, and then they pull on it again, and then probably you're right, like 2 wolves happen to pull on it at the same time the first time, and they get the food, and the next time they run right up to it, and one of them pulls on it, and they don't get the food. Over time, they likely learn just by trial and error that they have to wait. And wolves will wait about 10 seconds. Pet dogs will wait only a few seconds. They just barely solve the rope puzzle. Pack dogs, like wild dogs, never will do this. They won't ever solve it because they won't ever work together or wait. Elephants will wait 45 seconds on average for another elephant to show up.
But the record holder, according to Wikipedia, is the Kia, waiting 65 seconds for another. And I was like, well, the record holder's a human. Come on. We're the record holder in this game, but whatever.
Not me
Kia.
with my ADHD.
Well, I actually wrote in here, I was like, but whatever. I'm still waiting for Julian to come pull my rope with me so we can get this bread.
I'm on the couch playing video games.
Julian, I'm hungry. So I'm bringing these up because, one, I think they're fascinating. But really, to answer Cooper's question, we have to understand the fundamental question at the heart of it is, do animals think? And if so, how? And how would we be able to know if they do and how they are thinking? Another cognitive test, which I'm sure you've heard of, is the mirror test.
Yes. Of course I've heard of it, but why don't you explain it for if anybody else hasn't heard of it?
The mirror test is you put a mirror in the animal habitat, pool, exhibit, the forest, wherever. You leave it there for a while so they get used to it. And then you put a dot on the body of the animal that's visible to them in the mirror and see if they notice the dot and touch on their own bodies where the dot is. And it shows that, allegedly, they understand that that is them in the mirror. It was first done in 1970 by Gallup. Chimps and bonobos and orangutans and maybe a gorilla, although that took a lot of work, allegedly, to get it to understand, can pass it. They call pass the mirror test. In 2001, they did it with dolphins, and the dolphins could pass it. They, swum around and were like, what is that thing on me? Looking in the mirror. And some capuchins, I guess, use it to look at their own genitals because they can't normally see them. So they're like, hey, I can see these. That's cool.
We really are very closely related to monkeys, aren't we?
You know what? I wasn't going to say it, but yep. In 2006, Asian elephants may have passed the mirror test. They put a dot, but they have really bad eyesight. And that is why I bring up why it took so long for the different animals to wait for their rope partners. Because just because you pass the rope test, just because you pass the mirror test, there are different gradations of passing. And every animal is going to pass it at a different time in a different way. They're just individual animals. It's not like the whole species could pass it. It's a whole different thing.
Right.
Humans, by the way, will pass the mirror test between 18 and 24 months if you were to do that with a human.
Wow. So it took us that long to realize that the dot was on us, huh?
Yeah. Took us a while.
Oh, you mean like an 18 to 24-month-old baby. Got it. Sorry.
You can try this at home, by the way, if you have a pet at home or, a human, sure, if you want. Position a mirror near your pet's food dish so that it can see its face and its head. Whenever you feed the animal, pat it on its head, just normally, regular, give it a little pat. Do this for a week. And then after a while, the dog or the cat will just get used to getting pet when it gets its food and also be used to the mirror. And then you put some baking soda on your hand if it's a dark colored pet or, a dark enough colored pet. Or you can use something else basically something odorless that's a powder that's going to be non-toxic. And you put it on your hand and then you touch their head. And if it leaves a mark on their head and they look in the mirror and they look at it and try and hit it, it means that they passed the mirror test. Some pets will do this, some won't. But again, Julian, what does it mean if Pepper passes the mirror test when it comes to Pepper's cognition?
She's self-centered, like we know she is.
Right. Some people would argue that it shows that they understand sense of self. I, as not an expert in this field, think that goes a bit far. I think I may understand that it's them in the mirror, but it's sort of does an 18-month-old understand that sense of self? No, not really. It might know that I am an individual, that individual is me, but it might not have a theory of mind where there are other individuals and those individuals are different than I am. That comes about much later. So it's only giving us this very small part of our cognition.
My dog definitely does not have theory of mind, which I think about all the time.
Yeah.
Right? Theory of mind is the understanding that other beings do not think the same way you do. And I think the perfect illustration of this is my dog is convinced the cat wants her ball.
That's funny.
Her bouncy ball that she plays fetch with. If the cat goes anywhere near it, Pepper freaks, right? And I've tried to show her, I grab it and I'll hold it in front of the cat and be like, look, she doesn't want it.
She does not care.
It is not valuable to the cat the way it's valuable to you. And Pepper doesn't get it.
Yeah, of course not. Yeah. I think theory of mind, I can't remember, but I think they think that chimps have a theory of mind, maybe, and bonobos, but humans don't even get it for a while, like in our development. It's like years of development before we get theory of mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does make sense.
Some people never get it, as far as I can tell.
That's probably true. So all of these tests are just a handful of the different tests animal cognitionists would use to try and determine how animals think, but they all only answer these one little teeny aspect of their thought process. And again, if we could just ask them what they're thinking about, that would be so helpful, but we can't do that. Cooper specifically mentioned dogs, and we did a whole episode in Animal IQ about dogs. They're smart enough to understand social cues, and that is enough to make humans think that they are smarter than they are. We talked about this, I think, on the show before. Being a smart dog and an intelligent dog are not the same thing. Studies show that dogs don't understand guilt,
right?
and
shame.
Mentioned
that.
We've mentioned that specifically, where like the dog tears up your couch while you're out. You come home, the dog is excited. Look, the couch is torn up, and you punish the dog. And then the next time it does that, because it doesn't necessarily connect the punishment to the crime, it might do it again. And then you come home and it's going to try a different tactic, right? The first time, maybe it was excited. The second time, maybe it hides, or maybe it looks sad. And it does that, which is actually a fear response, that face that it's making when to us is like, oh, it's shameful. That's actually, to a dog, that means it's scared. It's afraid. And so it's afraid of punishment, but we attribute it to guilt and shame because we're personifying. And that's fine. I'm not judging that. I'm just saying it's not feeling that guilt as far as we can tell based on brain scans and behavioral understanding of these animals. We don't think that they can experience that because that requires understanding the past, how we did something wrong and it was harmful or impacted another individual other than us. It's a kind of complex emotion. Even children don't have it when they're very young. So it makes sense that dogs wouldn't necessarily feel that. They have about the emotional capacity of a 2.5-year-old, they usually say. There's a whole section in dog brains that exists just to process human faces, and this is because we selectively bred them to do that over thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So if you do that, you're going to end up with an animal that really is attuned to us. But does that mean that animal is smarter? No. It just means that to us, it is more helpful, more friendly, more useful, more of a companion. But that doesn't make the animal smarter necessarily.
In the way of like being able to solve problems, yeah.
Right, yeah. It also doesn't help us understand how it thinks. So really interesting. Dogs bred alongside us given problem-solving tasks, like pet dogs. If the problem is difficult and there is a human researcher in the room, I'm sure you've seen Pepper do this, the dog will turn to the human for help.
Right.
Wolves will never do that. It will never, if there is a human nearby, the wolf will never look to the human for help. They'll just keep trying different strategies until they can solve the problem or they'll give up. And it's partly because we've taught dogs to do that.
Strong, independent wolf who don't need no human.
That's right. I don't need it. Put your things in that box to the left. There are reward center in dogs that responds very strongly to praise, sometimes even more than food. Again, we bred them to do that. And they're very good at this. They follow human orders. They like being companions. They like being social. But all of this makes Cooper's question still very confusing to answer. When we as humans form a thought, dialogue, or emotion, he wrote, then we accompany that typically with words and phrases. But animals don't do that in their heads as far as we can tell. And every animal thinks differently. Like we like to say, oh, elephants can solve the rope test. Which elephants? There are several species of elephant. And not all of them think the same way because they didn't all have the same evolutionary pressures and processes that got them to the elephant that they are today.
Or like individual elephants, right? Like I think of the delta between really smart people and really not so smart people. And it's massive.
It is, yeah.
I've seen a lot of people solve escape rooms, and it's stunning how good some people are at problem solving and how utterly hopeless other people are. And we're all humans.
We are. I think my favorite story you've told me is like somebody was trying to like rip something off the wall or something. And you're like, that's not involved in the story. You don't need to do that.
Somebody set off 2 fire extinguishers. Because I don't know what they thought the second one was going to do that the first one didn't.
That's great. That's
Anyway.
excellent. So Cooper asked about the animal language, and there is evidence that animals communicate in their own ways. Language is a tough maybe bar to get over, but I did another show about something similar to this called In Our Nature with Joe Hansen and Emily Grassley, and I did an episode about animal culture, which is shared amongst animals. So white-crowned sparrows in San Francisco sing little sparrow song to find mates and, mark their territory. They make all these different noises. It's actually really interesting. They make all these different noises and chirps, and they'll be like, when you're too close to their bush that they live in, they get really upset, and they like flit around, and they're like, and they get really mad. This guy named Luis Baptista, an ornithologist at the California Academy of Sciences, would walk around San Francisco, and he would listen to these sparrows and realized that different parts of the city, the sparrows sang slightly differently. Just listening to them, he realized this. And it's really similarly, like if you put them and played them next to each other, you might not know the difference.
Bird people are built different.
Bird nerds.
Bird nerds are
amazing. They're incredible. Wow.
Some of them were upset. I saw recently that, like, in the new Nosferatu movie, that there's a North American bird at one point that they heard. They're like, that's not supposed to be there.
That's great. Oh, I love that.
And then history nerds
awesome.
were like, also, there was no Germany in the 1830s.
Excellent. That's the kind of nerdy pedantry that I love. So what Baptista did is he started recording these bird songs. This was in the 60s and 70s. And white-crowned sparrows, they learn their songs when they're very young. They when they're just a few weeks old and into a few months old, and they're like teenagers for the white-crowned sparrow. They're learning from other sparrows around them, and they're practicing, and then at some point it sticks, and they just keep using that song, which means changes in their environment or birds that are around them can cause revisions in their songs. It can cause them to kind of change a little bit. So the birds that live near highways in San Francisco, like the entry ramp to the Golden Gate Bridge in the northwestern part of the city, those birds sing louder and at a higher pitch to get over the traffic noise.
Oh.
Whereas birds in quieter parts, like in the marina over, like in the quieter parts of the northern parts of the city where there's still lots of woods, like in the Presidio, they sing a little lower and a little like more range because they don't have to pack all of that information in a smaller space. It was a very interesting video I made. And the cool part about this, actually, this is not really related to Cooper's question, but Baptista did all this work and then he died and he left it at the California Academy and it was just like on his desk. And that was just there for a long time and nobody like touched it. And this person came and like started digging through these tapes recently, like in the 90s or early 2000s, and found all of these tapes that he had made. And that was when they like finally categorized it and gave him credit for like learning this thing that these sparrows all had culture. But like he just did it by ear. So interesting.
Amazing.
Anyway, we were doing the video because during the COVID-19 pandemic, famously, there was a lot less noise. So there was some researchers studying, are these white-crowned sparrows reverting to their old songs that have wider ranges of, it was very cool.
That is cool.
But the point that I bring it up for is that this is sort of like language. Right? These birds, they interpret the fitness of their mate from these songs. They mark their territories with these sounds. Their creativity in their song might mean that they're a more intelligent bird. They're trying harder. They practiced more. Whatever it is, they're speaking to each other in a language that they understand, but that we don't necessarily. And so Cooper mentions, are they thinking in meows and barks? They aren't. But they sort of are.
The sparrows definitely are not thinking in barks and meows.
Yeah, true. But they do have their own ways of communicating, which makes me wonder, and this isn't the question he asked, but I was like, to get at what I asked you right at the beginning, when you're thinking about things, is it words? Is it a language? Because that is what Cooper is asking, right? He's asking, when dogs think, do they think in a language? And my question for Cooper, which you were the proxy for, is, are you?
Yes and no?
Right. Maybe there have been studies on humans who can tell you what you're thinking about, and even we don't know necessarily what we think in, which is very interesting. So to imply that we would know what animals who we can't ask are thinking in is, we just don't know.
Yeah.
But language, whatever you want to call it, is a tool that we came up with because of our evolutionary process. We evolved it as a tool for survival, just like a hand or a stick. You know, we used it.
There was a lot of meat trapped under things that we needed two people to work together on.
With a rope of some kind.
It was necessary for our survival.
It was inside some kind of box that somehow got in this savanna. We had to get it out. And so we ended up inventing, if you will, language. But really what that means is, like, over millions of years, language, we were able to make some sounds, and that shared information. And the ones that were really good at it could share more information, right? And then they had more likely to pass on their offspring and teach other offspring how to do that. And brains and vocal cords mutated over time, and like the ones that could do it slightly better. And you just do that again and again and again and again. And cognition and comprehension and all of that in a big cycle. And now we have the ability to make all these different sounds and all these different languages, and we still can't tell you what we're thinking about and if we're thinking in a language. But thoughts aren't language. Like, I think the inherent problem in the question of do animals think in language, not just do we, but also thoughts and language aren't the same thing. Do you need language to make thoughts? No.
No.
We've done studies on this because of something we mentioned a couple episodes back, aphasia, the inability or impaired ability to understand or produce speech as a result of brain disease or brain damage. And in the US, most of us think of Wendy Williams or Bruce Willis, who were both diagnosed with aphasia. Bruce Willis's family announced in 2022 that he was diagnosed with aphasia, which then became a broader diagnosis of frontotemporal dementia. It's also common in stroke patients. They can't connect their words to their thoughts anymore. That doesn't mean they don't have thoughts, though. It just means they can't language the thoughts.
Yeah, articulate them, one might say.
Yeah, one might say if they were smarter than I. A PhD student named Nicole Carvalho said at the Center for Brain Recovery, the condition of aphasia affects language skills, but other cognitive processes are largely intact. In a 2017 study, they did brain studies and neuroimaging studies, so they scanned their brains, of people with aphasia, and they found that despite near their total loss of language, quote, these individuals are able to add, subtract, solve logic problems, think about another person's thoughts, appreciate music, and successfully navigate their environments. These neuroimaging studies show, quote, healthy adults strongly engage the brain's language areas when they understand a sentence, but not when they perform non-linguistic tasks like arithmetic, storing information in working memory, inhibiting prepotent responses, or listening to music. Many aspects of thought engage distinct brain regions that do not depend on language.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah. So, really interesting. Noam Chomsky was doing this talk that I found on YouTube when I was looking this up. He's at the University of Arizona, and he's like talking about language, and this woman asked...
That guy loves language.
He loves it.
It's like his whole thing.
He's like the bird nerd of language, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And he was like, this woman asked, why do some words, they don't just seem to describe my emotional state? There's just not a word for that. And he kind of, talked for a bit. And he said, well, we can't stop ourselves from talking to ourselves. Maybe that's not true for American Sign Language, though, because next to him was a sign language interpreter. He said out loud, maybe that's not true for signers. And he turned and he's like, is it? And the signer was like, we do. We sign to ourselves when we're at home alone.
That's amazing.
Which is incredible.
I love that.
It's so cool. And blind people and deaf people, they might not have the same experience of the world that we do, but they still have thoughts. They still have languages. They still have their own rich tapestry in their brains, which I just think is so cool to think about. Everybody just goes to their own experiences, but there's just so many more experiences in the world than ours.
Now I want to ask somebody who signs if there's somewhere that they feel like they can't comfortably sign to themselves, if they how they use sign language in their mind. Do they picture the hand motions? Do they feel in their muscles like the hand motions they would make, but they don't actually do it? I don't know. That's really
when you're
fascinating.
Dreaming, do you sign in your dreams and oh, neat. That's cool. Wow. Anyway, Cooper, thank you for the question. Do animals think and form thoughts in their own language? Not necessarily, but they do think. They just do it in their own way. And they probably don't think in language because we probably don't think in language either, which is pretty cool.
We've talked about this too in a past episode about animal languages in particular and how we're getting close to maybe decoding like a sperm whale language or something.
Yeah.
There's still a ton of debate over whether what these sounds that these animals make can be considered language, right?
Yeah.
Whether it transcends to that level of like communicating complex concepts that languages allow us to do.
Yes. Yeah. And it only works that way because you and I have agreed that all of these sounds mean these things.
That's true. It's got to be shared too.
Yeah, it has to be shared. And so like we could both be speaking our own languages, whatever those may be, and saying the same things, but we wouldn't know it because we didn't communicate it with each other in advance. Like we didn't have that shared history. You know, the Rosetta Stone is a fun cliche and like fun thing to invoke. But prior to the idea that you have a shared language and people have shared it with each other, there's no way to understand a language that you have no experience with. If aliens were to show up, per one of your very early questions, how would we tell them what left is?
Oh, that was a good one.
It's such a good episode. Go listen to it if you haven't. The problem is we have no shared past. We can't just be like, here's an apple, and then they would know what an apple is, but then they show us some weird fruit from their planet, and we're like, and they just go, and you're like, well, I don't know how to make all those noises. I don't know what that is. You know, there's literally no shared. They would know the word apple, but they wouldn't have their own word for it. You know, it just becomes this very complex idea. Linguistics people think about this a lot, and so I'm really just ham-handing my way around it. But.
Or if we're starting at that point, right? If you hold up an apple and say apple, they don't know is like the motion of holding up this fruit. What you call apple is like what is apple still? It's not clear.
Yeah, I watched Arrival, and I thought, man, linguistics people probably both love and hate this film because it does like very lightly touch on some of the power of like communication and understanding and linguistics, but also it's just like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a Hollywood movie.
It's a Hollywood movie. So it does its best, but it's also, you can't get too complex with it.
Probably better than what we were putting out in the 90s in terms of like thoughtful accuracy.
Yes, I agree with that.
Terminal velocity, maybe not the most accurate.
What are you talking about? Charlie Sheen only makes winners. He's winning.
He's a hero in Russia.
Oh, man. Wow.
Anyway.
Yeah. So, Julian, before we wrap up, remember earlier when you said that those astronauts are in a perpetual state of free fall?
Yeah.
So, I'm going to be in one. Not an astronaut. I wish I could say that.
You're going to be in an astronaut?
So, here's the deal. I get to bring a friend with me on this zero-G flight, and it can be any of you listening right now, as far as I know. You should go to spaceforhumanity.org/flywithtrace. When you go to that website, you can apply to be one of the friends who gets to go along with us, and it's going to be me, and it's going to be Dr. Sine Proctor, and Amanda Wynn, and Kat Voltage, and Emily Calandrelli, and I mean, it's going to be quite a few of us on this airplane that I'm, again, going to embarrass myself on.
A bunch of cool people floating around.
And we're just going to be floating around.
Just hanging out.
So if you want to join, again, spaceforhumanity.org/flywithtrace, and you can apply. So anyway, thanks, Cooper, for your question. And thanks to Frederik for your question. Thanks to you listening currently right now for listening to this episode of That's Absurd. Please elaborate. The show was created and written and produced by me, Trace Dominguez.
And me, Julian Huguet.
It was also edited and produced by the wonderful and wonderfully verbose Kyle Sisk. So many words.
Man who's constantly not telling us what he's thinking for our own sake.
If you want to submit a question, I mentioned it at the top of the show. Just go down to the show notes. You can email us, go to our website. You can even call us on the phone. And you can find all that information in the description or the show notes.
Thanks to our new Patreon subscribers, we've got Silver Skies, which is very appropriate for our raindrop-themed episode, as well as our absurd administrators, Les, Adam, and Austin. So thank you for subscribing over there on the Patreon, patreon.com/that'sabsurdshow. Helps us make this thing. And you get a few little goodies, like the announcement sketch video that is about to go live on our YouTube. It's been up on our Patreon for weeks.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, if you haven't watched it, you can go watch it on Patreon if you joined, or you can find it on YouTube, which again, we are posting video soon on YouTube. So go subscribe, go to YouTube and search for Trace Elements. It looks like a little atom, or you can go to youtube.com/@trace-elements, or you can go to the show notes link there. If you haven't left us a review wherever you're listening right now, or followed the show, or given us a like, or whatever, please do that. It really tells other people that this show is important and worthy of their time.
Important is a strong word for what we do here.
You're right. Maybe I'm overselling it a little bit.
You know what? It's not important because you deserve to have something fun right now. It's okay.
It's okay
to
if
have this frivolous, silly science podcast in your life.
You're right. That's a good point. It's not important, but it is fun.
Even a little bit.
So leave us a follow or a thumbs up or whatever. I see you, like 300 people have made reviews on Spotify. We see the new reviews on Apple Podcasts all the time. For example, here's a review. Binge-worthy. Stumbled on this show totally at random and have been binging it for a week. Got hooked immediately. Recommended both of the Halloween episodes and the episode of how many chihuahuas it would take to run the Iditarod. Julian, if I had a chihuahua, I would be running some tests right now. Since I don't, I decided to write a little review. Keep it up. Enjoy the show. I think that's awesome.
I love that.
Thanks for leaving that review.
I love the other one we got recently. They were like, oh, I was a big fan of Trace and I saw him on another podcast and came here, and Julian seems nice as well.
Yep, that's my favorite review.
I've
got it on my desktop of my computer, and I look at it when I need a laugh.
The running theme of people being like, oh yeah, and then there's Julian. You know what? If it makes you leave reviews, I will take it. I will happily take it. It's so funny to me.
It's really good. So thank you to everyone who's left a review. We just sent out stickers to 2 people who left a review and then shot us an email and said that they left us a review. So that's really nice of them. So thanks to those people. Finally, a special thanks to those who are listening on Nebula. If you haven't heard of Nebula before, it's a streaming service that I invest in and that we post our podcast on. And by listening to the podcast over there on Nebula, just by listening to it, you give us a little bit of monetary support. We appreciate that, and we appreciate everyone who has joined Nebula with our code for the same reason. If you want to join Nebula and see us and a bunch of other creators, all of whom, just by watching them like you would anyway, you give support, just go to nebula.tv/that'sabsurdshow. That tells them that we sent you. You join Nebula with that, and you get a discount for a year subscription. It's like $30. It's really affordable, and it's great. As we say at the end of every episode,
without air resistance, raindrops would be terminal.
Wow.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
I'm not even going to say. I have one written. I'm not even going to say it. I can't top that.
Sometimes you just find it on the first try, you know?
Can I give you one note, though? You have to take your glasses off and look into the distance like the guy from CSI Miami.
All right. I guess because there's no air resistance, that raindrop reached terminal velocity.
Yeah! Who are you?
And we're done.